Badass Attitudes, licensed here, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Just as apples are a core ingredient to a healthy diet, Kelly Orchard's Apple a Day is a core ingredient to living a fruitfully badass life. Fruitful Fridays with Kelly Orchard's Apple a Day and Weekend Vibes. Let's take a bite of some Apple a Day topics.
That's right, it is Fruitful Friday. Thank you very much, Mr. Ocean. Hey everybody, I'm Kelly Orchard, the B.A.D.A.S.S certifier, coming to you on this Fruitful Friday, April 2nd, the first Friday of April. It's also Good Friday, and we're beginning a whole new theme this month of April. And it's the theme of the letter A, the second A in B.A.D.A.S.S, in the acronym, which stands for awareness. Now, just for those of you who might be new to the podcast, B.A.D.A.S.S is an acronym, and it's the tools that you need to be successfully badass. So I go through each one of them. So if you're new to the podcast and you want to catch up on the bus to Badassville, I invite you to scroll back and catch up and listen to the very first in January, because in the whole month of January, I covered the letter B in B.A.D.A.S.S, which stands for be bold, be brave, be confident, be yourself. But how can you be yourself if you don't know yourself? So we go through some of the things to help you get to know who you are, what you want to do, and what you always wanted to be, and maybe where you want to go now. And then the A in B.A.D.A.S.S, the first A in B.A.D.A.S.S stands for attitude is everything. And you need a positive one if you want to lead a successfully badass life. And I give you tools on how to remain positive and how to rewire your brain for positivity. And then the second, the D in B.A.D.A.S.S is what we just finished up in the month of March, which stands for decide. That's the hardest part about making a shift in your life, is to recognize that you don't want to stay where you are. You don't want to be stuck, and you have to make a decision that it's time to make a change, and then be determined and dedicated to that course. And then this month of April, we're covering the second letter A in B.A.D.A.S.S, which stands for awareness. And all this month, I'm going to be sharing with you about mindfulness, emotional intelligence, a little bit of nostalgia and positive psychology on how to tap into those happy, warm memories. Or it's spring break and core values. We're talking about a little bit of productivity and, of course, awareness. And that's what we're going to cover today on Fruitful Friday.
A badass is mindful of their surroundings, has a positive mindset and a plan. Certifying badasses one podcast at a time, like this one.
Alrighty then. Certifying badasses one podcast at a time. That's right, Bobby. Hey everybody, Kelly Orchard back. Okay, so how do I motivate myself when my job has now become so routine? Now, there's been such a huge shift in the work environment. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. But sometimes the work is routine to the point where you're kind of bored, or you're not feeling like you're growing, and maybe you're fearful to say anything. Maybe you're fearful to say whatever. You want to keep learning. You need to work on some hobbies. You've got to develop some transferable skills. That's how you can motivate yourself, by learning and personal happiness. Creativity actually gets fired up in your downtime. So you've got to take care of yourself, self-care without guilt. I talk about that often, how I'm a writer. So writing is my hobby. So when I'm doing self-care, people misinterpret that as I'm working so hard. And I've recently had to reflect on this. This is the awareness, part of awareness for you, is to understand why you do some of the things you do if they're good for you, and then being able to express it when people almost accuse you of not taking care of yourself. But the thing is that creativity is going to be fired up in your downtime. If you're constantly looking for some way to solve a problem, all you're doing is making the problem bigger. But learning is what's going to help you grow and help your team or your family or your loved ones also grow. Some of the leadership mistakes that I've seen, for example, I was consulting some market managers in radio not too long ago, and one market manager who was managing several radio stations, now you can please attribute this to any of your business experiences, said that he's had 4 regional managers blow through his radio stations in as many years. And not a one of them had more experience than he did. And they didn't offer him any help, just pressure. I just couldn't imagine being in that kind of work environment. Can you? But I bet a lot of you are. But then I want you to also experience some self-awareness. And if you're a manager, if you're the boss, if you're the leader, how are you learning for yourself so that you can teach some new skills and transferable skills and fill your toolbox for your team? Remember, it starts there. The rules have shifted. So how are you going to design your next season? I say that my Kelly Orchard is my brand. And for those of you that don't know about my Kelly Orchard's Apple a Day podcast, you can get those also on the same platform just search Kelly Orchard again, and you'll find my Apple a Day. But that's my brand. And so I talk a lot about seasons of personal growth. Right. So, that I luckily with my name, I can use a lot of alliterations and metaphors. So the seasons of growth are so spring, what do we do in the spring? Well, we plant seeds, we cultivate the land for new growth, and we're maybe going to be watering a little bit. So when you think about that in your garden, okay, that's what you do. So now I want you to consider how are you going to design a new season now, a new garden? Imagine what you want it to look like. Well, now you have to begin with, some of the tools, the basics. Well, you can't just make it up out of nowhere, right? Well, that's why, I recommend the B.A.D.A.S.S certification class.
B.A.D.A.S.S certification class. What's that?
I'm glad you asked that, Bobby. The B.A.D.A.S.S certification class is a workshop where we focus your mind on the details of what you want.
How do you like them apples?
Well, the Apple a Day is a core ingredient for becoming a certified B.A.D.A.S S because you need to have some daily tools that'll help to retrain and rewire your brain for happiness. And my Apple a Day books and series is really helpful for that because we go through each season, and each Apple a Day book gets you through one full season. So we have spring, summer, fall, and winter. I want to tell you a little bit about my 2006 Mustang, and it's a metaphor too, which is why on Monday you'll have more Mustang Monday episodes. And every Monday I have the Mustang Monday, but it kind of came out, and I shared the story earlier. So if you want to recall the story about how Mustang Monday began, you've got to go back to the beginning where I share how the Mustang Monday started. But the car itself is a metaphor that gave me confidence. I refer to it as my heart car, and it's my trusty steed to get me where I needed to go. I bought that car just months before I suffered from heart failure. And then it sat in the garage for months because I couldn't drive anywhere. And nobody else in my family was allowed to drive it. It was a brand new car, and I couldn't drive it, and nobody else in the family. Well, everybody was younger. They were my kids. So it just sat in the car. But when I was able to drive it again, when my doctor gave me permission to drive, it became my tool to help me remain grounded in who I am. It helped shift my attitude because, come on, it's a badass car. It's a stick shift. It's a 5.0, and it's got a V8 engine and black leather interior, and it's red. It's a badass car. I love that car. And it just gave me a good attitude, a positive attitude. It allows me to tap in to how badass I am. Now, remember, it's sometimes I consider the car, and I almost not really embarrassed by it, but I don't want the perception to be that that's my midlife crisis car. No, I purchased that car before my midlife crisis had me. So what that car represents to me is tenacity, healing. It's my heart car. It took me to every single doctor's appointment that I went to. It was my trusty steed and my friend to get me where I needed to go. And that's how I adjusted my attitude. You can adjust your attitude too, and I use music to help regulate emotions. So when you're making decisions, it helps to gain clarity, build energy, refocus, refresh, relax, re-energize, and improve your relationships. Yes, music really helps when you allow it to. And that's part of the awareness in the A in B.A.D.A.S.S, the emotional intelligence.
When the bus arrives at B.A.D.A.S.sville, you discover it's not a place, it's a state of being. A badass is happy, healthy, and strives to have a balanced life.
Now I want to share with you some reflections of Sedona. I shared earlier at the beginning of March. Okay, so I went to Sedona at the end of February, and the March podcast was already, the content creation was already there, and I was going to Sedona with the intention of kind of working a little bit on my April content, just to get some fresh ideas in a different environment. That's how we create. But I wasn't intending, the trip had a completely different tone to it. And so here's what and so you may know a little bit, and I'm still struggling with the sprained ankle, actually. So here's what happened. My intent to go to Sedona was to do a little hiking and exploring, but all signs kept leading that I just needed to rest and recover and prepare for something that's coming. This sprained ankle. So here's what happened. I was on my way to Sedona to meet my daughter and her husband and my two grandberries. I call my grandchildren grandberries, and she has my grandson and my granddaughter. And so we were going to meet in Sedona. It's her birthday, and we were going to have a little camp out in the middle of the Red Rocks, on BLM land, and that Bureau of Land Management land, where you can camp for free, and we had done it a couple months before, so we kind of knew what to expect. So, but I thought that I was going to spend a week out there. I had an Airbnb that I had already rented for after the 4 days in the Red Rocks. So I had this intention that this was going to be, I was going to hike, I was going to explore. I wanted to I'm getting a new office space, so I wanted to take a picture myself of a sunrise under the rocks in Sedona that I got myself. So that would have meant getting up really early in the morning and then getting out on the hiking trails early so that I can catch sunrise. But on my way there, I stopped to see a friend in Lake Havasu. And as we were getting ready to go out to dinner, I misstepped, taking a step down into the garage, and fell and twisted my ankle pretty badly. Okay, so overnight with ice, the next day I got up to drive out to Sedona. And remember, the Mustang, I did take the Mustang, obviously. You've seen the pictures. And it's a stick shift. So the 4 hours to Sedona the following morning was pretty painful. So by the time I got to my daughter and the trailer in the middle of the wilderness in the Red Rocks, my ankle was pretty swollen up like a balloon. Fortunately, there's no bruising, and there wasn't black and blue or discolored, so I knew it wasn't broken. It was just a really bad sprain. But it was very painful, and so I climb up into the trailer, and fortunately my daughter, at this point, the trailer is her home. They're not just camping, they're traveling the country and living in it as her home. So she had all of the first aid amenities, the ice pack, the ace bandage, of course, we're in Sedona, the essential oils to heal, the lavender and such. And so we got me all fixed up and started propping it up then. But of course, 4 days camping, okay, I wasn't prepared for this. It's like all signs, remember I said earlier, all signs led to that I needed to rest and recover to prepare for something that's coming. But I wanted to hike. Sprained ankle pretty much cinched the deal, didn't it? It really did. So 4 days camping, trying to collect pictures of sunrises, and I wasn't able to get any closer because I couldn't walk any further distances. It was very, you know how it is in the wilderness. It's unstable ground, and you could step on what you think is a dirt clod, and it's actually a rock. Or you can think that you're avoiding a rock, and it was actually something else. Or you think that you're stepping on a stable thing, and there's actually a hole there. So the practice of mindfulness took on a whole new meaning for me because every step was a possible landmine. I had to be very aware every step I took so that I wouldn't twist my ankle again. It was already very, very tender. So I'm here camping out with my grandchildren who are 4 and 2. The trailer is their home, so their toys are everywhere. 3 steps down and 3 steps up to get into the trailer, back in and out. So as not to crowd the space, I left all my belongings in the trunk of my Mustang. The last trip I did the same thing, and it was a breeze, no problem. It kind of like parked the car right next to the door, so when I needed something that was mine, I could just go out and open up my trunk, and there it was, and it wasn't in anybody's way. But this time I was gimpy, and I needed help. So I had to really shift my mindset too. I had to accept my vulnerability. I had to be aware of everything. And I don't think I've ever practiced mindfulness in such a way. I hadn't planned on getting any treatments, but because my body had suffered a bit of trauma, I was tensed up. I was overcompensating, right? So even when I wanted to go out and see the sunset. So fortunately, there was a trail, but it was rocky and uneven, and all sorts of stuff that you had to avoid. I had to walk very slowly, and instead of being able to watch, see around me, I had to have almost tunnel vision to right in front of my feet to watch every step I took. And it took much longer to get to my destinations. Everything was changed. So, I've told this story to some of my clients and friends, and wow, how amazing that you were able to just shift your whole perspective. Most people would have been just so angry that they sprained their ankle. Well, that's because I'm a badass. But the thing is, it's not anything special about me. It is the tools that I implement. It's the tools in my toolbox. What other choice did I have? This was my choice. I had two choices. I could be angry and upset that I sprained my ankle and I couldn't do anything, and I could have been grumpy the whole time that I was there. Or I could have just practiced awareness and been aware of how I was feeling and kind of come to terms, learn the lessons that, hey, I can shift my mindset about how this trip is going to go. And I can enjoy it anyway. So yeah, I still enjoyed watching my grandchildren play in the trailer. I still got the quality time with them. No, I didn't get to dance with them or hike with them or those kinds of things. But because I was a bit confined, I spent a whole lot more time observing them and just watching them and enjoying them playing. In fact, to the fact where I had to apologize to them because they'd catch me just watching them and think it was all creepy. I'm staring at them, but I had nothing better, literally, I had nothing better to be observing than watching my children play or my grandchildren play with their toys and having conversations with my daughter. The trip would have been completely different. But the thing is that my daughter, it's like I said, my daughter had mentioned to me that I needed to book a treatment when I went back to stay in my Airbnb, and I realized she was right. I had overcompensated the trauma to my body. So I made the calls and I was able to make the appointment to get a Reiki practitioner who also does massage. She was the same one that treated me last summer and taught me so much about the importance of the breathing and the stretching of your body. You've got to have the entire package, mind, body, and spirit. And even though I'm mindful and I do have a regular walking routine and a regular meditation practice that I do and relaxation, and I talk about my self-care in writing. I mean, this podcast is actually one of them. But I have to own this and be aware, I'm self-owning this, that I haven't been stretching or doing the breathing exercises to take care of that aspect of my body. So although I've been doing the walking and taking my restful baths and the meditation and the prayerful practices to keep my mindset proper, I haven't really been stretching or doing those deep cleansing breaths. So one session with her was a great reminder to go back to the practices that I know before. So what kinds of things have worked for you in the past? This is a time to practice some self-awareness, mindfulness, emotional intelligence. Pay attention to your body. How is it feeling these days? Is the tension of the stress of your daily life affecting your body too? Is the hustle in the grind really worth it? So mindfulness exercises for drills and skills. Don't let an obstacle spoil your plans. Being badass means having the emotional intelligence to flip the disappointment. Don't let it ruin everything. And how music can help you too, because believe me, music does it all for me. So as a young dancer in my 20s, if I would have sprained my ankle, the definition of badass would be shake it off and dance anyway. The show must go on. And I did have that mindset and that attitude. I did not let a little injury prevent me from even just going to dance class or teaching my dance class or performing if we were performing. However, as you get older, that definition of badass must change when your body lets you know that being badass means smart enough to know that you need some rest and recovery. And that's how that's how we become successfully badass, is knowing the difference, that awareness. And that's what this month of March or April is all about for you. You know, last month we did the letter D in badass. Well, D in badass does not mean denial. Okay. I had to stay off my ankle in order for it to heal. And here I am a month later, and honestly, I'm still struggling with it. Just yesterday, I had my very first public speaking event in a year because of, COVID. And it was fun. And I was actually able to wear, I wear some chunky heeled boots. And my ankle was sore by the time I was over with. So I'm still nursing my ankle. I'm very self-aware.
Kelly Orchard's Apple a Day. Good medicine for a badass.
All right, so here we are, yes, with some apple a day. So as we prepare for some weekend vibes, this is Fruitful Friday. I'm Kelly Orchard, the B.A.D.A.S.S certifier. So, as I travel and see orchards along the highway, I occasionally see a dead tree within an orchard and can't help but wonder how it's perceived by passersby. Does it look out of place? Will it be replaced soon with a seedling? Does that one dead tree ruin the entire orchard and rot all the fruits? The tree will eventually be replaced by another, and the other trees within the orchard are not harmed at all. In fact, when a tree dies, it is pruned and harvested, and a new tree might be planted in its place. Occasionally, things in our lives die off, whether it's a relationship, a career, a dream, or a goal, or an achievement we sought. They're just things beyond our control. Although we cannot replace people in our lives that we have lost, we can be open to meeting new ones and establishing new relationships. We can build new careers, jobs, and new dreams. Here are wise words from Diane Dew, Kingdom Fruitfulness. Spiritual growth is a gradual process, and it takes time. There can be no fruit until adequate growth has taken place within the plant itself. A long time passes from the time that the seed was first sown into the ground to when the fruit appears. Seeds themselves do not bear fruit, but they can become fruit-bearing trees if received into the right environment and given time to grow. Think about the seeds that you're planting on this Fruitful Friday. Now, do you wish your life were different than it is right now? Are you frustrated that you aren't as happy or as successful as you expected to be? When you set out on a journey toward personal growth, you commit to learning, listening, and pursuing new ways to branch out, meet new people, and explore new ideas. When you commit to personal growth and remain open to new ideas, and stop closing your mind to opportunities, you plant seeds that will lead to the life you imagined for yourself. When we stop growing, we become frustrated. In his book, Unapologetically You, Reflections on Life and the Human Experience, Steve Maraboli writes, "You're frustrated because you keep waiting for the blooming of the flowers of which you have yet to sow the seeds." Get out there and sow some seeds of personal growth, and make sure you plant a lot of them. All right, so for some weekend vibes and fruitfulness, today's Good Friday is the first weekend of April. Yesterday, I was pleased and honored to be presenting at the Professional Women's Roundtable here in Temecula. It was great to be out speaking and presenting. The energy is just so much better in person, and hugging is like the new luxury, isn't it? So I did do a new song for them, and I was demonstrating about the B.A.D.A.S.S soundtrack and how you can use music to even create a new memory that you can always remember and feel good. And so I shared with them about heart math and the awareness of your heart, and more on that in other future podcasts. And then I shared a song, and I told the story about this wine group that I'm in. And then I shared a story of how this song I was able to attach to this memory of this group. And it happened to be the favorite song of one of the women who was the founder of this group. Now, I'll tell you what the song is, Build Me Up Buttercup from The Commitments. And maybe I'll tell you about it later, or I'll play the song later, or maybe I'll add it to my B.A.D.A.S.S certification class. But the thing is that what this happened was it was a collaboration of energy that shifted the attitude in the room. When I played the song, I will admit I had to encourage them to kind of get up and dance a little bit. But and she told me afterwards, she says, "Well, I just figured that if you went to the trouble to play the song for me, then I could at least get up and dance when you asked me to." But that was when the shift in the whole room happened, was when she got up and danced with a friend, and they danced to the song, and the whole energy was focused on that happy, joyful moment. Shifted the whole room. So this is what I want for your weekend vibes. Take the time this weekend to turn up the volume and the energy with some music and dance with your friends and loved ones. It'll wash away the tension and the sadness and make you feel better. Even if it's only temporary, because what you're doing is you're using nostalgia and positive energy, and you're shifting the hormones in your brain, and that's the oxytocin and the dopamine. You're increasing those. It's like our personal feel good drug. So the dancing and the music will make you feel better until the drug starts to wear off. And then you just got to turn on the tunes again and repeat as necessary. I promise it'll help you feel better. It'll start to shift your mindset and your perspective to a more positive energy. Practice some awareness, and those are problems that you need to be solved. You'll just be able to think more clearly. All right, so hey, this is what we learned on today's Fruitful Friday podcast. We're starting with the letter A in B.A.D.A.S.S for the entire month of April. So be sure to come back for Mustang Monday and Wednesday Wisdom as we begin the letter A in B.A.D.A.S.S for the entire month of April, which means awareness. We're going to be learning about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and how important it is. It's sort of like spring break, so we'll cover some of your core values and how to be a little more productive. Awareness, emotional intelligence, some more nostalgia, of course, and positive psychology. So listen, what tools have you added to your toolbox? If you're ready to sign up for the next step toward getting licensed to be badass, then the first thing I want you to do is get my Badass Habits ebook, because that'll get you on the bus to Badassville. All you got to do is click the link in the show notes, or you can go to the licensed2bebadass.com website and scroll and find the way to sign up for your Badass Habits ebook. Hey, you know what? When you do, I'll send you a Licensed to be Badass sticker too, so you can, represent and remember that you are on your way to getting licensed to be badass. I'm Kelly Orchard, the Badass Certifier, and I'll see you Monday in the Mustang.
Be sure to subscribe and hop on the bus to Badassville. Now, go out and be fruitful.